broken open or anything, but it's ugly. It's got a big one behind her ear. The kids look at her and they're like,
Have a call to order for the Bartlett Economic Development Commission meeting of February 12th, 2024. A roll call.
Erickson,
here.
Densford, Gorski.
Here.
Commissioner Gutenkopf. Commissioner Cabasco.
Oh, is that me?
Cabasco, you're there.
Here. Here.
Adam Lewinsky is absent. Commissioner Perry. Go back to him, he's here. And Mr. Suffern? Okay, great. We have a quorum tonight. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is approval of the previous meeting minutes from December 11th, 2023. Do we have a discussion on the minutes or a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Agenda item number 4, public comment. Now open.
Village Administrator is here, member of the public, or Sam Hughes, or officer, any public comments here?
Thank you for being here. Thank you for volunteering and serving on this commission. Tony's got a big report that he puts together every year, especially for you, but I find it one of his most useful reports. So I appreciate you taking the time to take all this information.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further comments, we'll move on to agenda item number 5. We're going to have an annual economic indicator review.
Thank you, Chairman Cabasco, and it is great to have Paula Schumacher here. There were two of you on the EDC back throughout 2015 into 2016 when actually Paula Schumacher at the time was the point person for a marketing plan. I was looking at some of the documentation of it earlier today, just to familiarize myself with it again. We had 5 EDC meetings where we were kind of delving deep into various areas of the town. I use a nice phrase here that the economy was struggling. If you recall, we had those of you who've been in town for a while, and especially those of you in business, remember when our overall vacancy rate throughout the entirety of Bartlett was about 20%. It didn't hit that real high vacancy rate, as you might think, like in the height of the recession that went in 2008 and 2009, but it was kind of a little bit during the aftermath of that. And the vacancy rate in downtown hit close to 30%. So again, Commissioner Perry and Commissioner Cabasco were on the EDC for those meetings. I was looking through some of the minutes today, and we were going kind of area by area in the town, generally strategizing and coming up with a marketing plan. One of the, I just pulled 3 of the pictures from back in those days, and you just have to trust me, I had dozens of pictures like that. And what you see was the Bartlett Fresh Market that we looked at empty for over a decade. There in the middle, it's kind of hard to see on a small photo, but that's the Dominic's that closed in December of 2013. And on the left-hand photo there is of Lucky Jack's that was right around the corner and also vacant and boarded up at that time. So our meetings were a little different back then. That's before we had stuff like the BETA program, and we were just kind of brainstorming month after month about different ways to try to improve our local economy here. So I start with a few more introductory comments. You know, I always say economic development is like a sport. It's competitive. We felt like, you know, we were competing to try to attract investment into our community, and it's also a team sport. It's just not Paula or me or Scott or Sam or you guys or the board. It's a team effort. Business owners, brokers, shopping center owners. We've all been working in tandem to fill a lot of these spaces. So I just wanted to remind you what this came out of was a marketing plan. And one of the things that during the last meeting, the discussion was about key performance indicators. So a few months later after that, because the village board approved this marketing strategy that we did in June of 2016. So in early 2017, and then every early year ever since then. So I guess this is like the 8th or 9th time that I'm bringing these performance indicators, or economic indicators as I call them, before you. So there, I just kind of went over that already. June of 2016, after the EDC meetings were in 2015, as I mentioned. And it addressed key development areas, including key performance indicators. We reviewed it annually. And there's a photo I took back, years ago. I can't even tell you exactly what building that is right now, but one thing I can tell you is that Brewster Creek's changed quite a bit over those years. So getting into some of these numbers, I also have one more thing to say, is that another adage is you can't improve on what you don't measure. So we like to take a look at this every year, see, are we making progress? Are we moving backwards? How are things looking? Our village always is big into strategic planning and planning for the future and laying the groundwork for multiple years when it comes to whatever the capital plan or just an annual strategic plan to guide staff and the commissions as we move forward. And then one thing I hadn't always mentioned for these reports, what I have before you, or what I handed out was the memo, but if you recall in the packet was like 60+ pages of reports and statistics. So I really want to thank Choose DuPage. Through some of their subscriptions, I ordered the CoStar reports usually once per year, and these job EQ reports that I use. Each of these reports would be like $500 if you just bought them like right off the website. So I also use some census data, something called Census on the Map, which actually comes out of the economic census that's usually updated every 3 years. I put in the CMAP annual report. That's really a lot of good information and comprises, quite a lot of this. And the state statistics come when I talk about unemployment rates and sales taxes and NAICS codes of who's selling what. Those all come from the state, the Department of Revenue or the Department of Employment Security. And of course, I have some Village Finance Department statistics too in there. So you know where all these numbers came from. And I'm going to launch into the latest statistics. I'm going to kind of breeze through it because it's a lot. And stop me if you want, or just I'll go through it and then you can ask questions afterwards, whatever you prefer. So anyway, last year I was sitting here talking about the vacancy rate under 1%, which is basically unheard of. The year before had been 3.5%. So CoStar, this report that I ordered in early January, gave a 7% vacancy rate. But I'm here to tell you tonight, it's going to be like about 1.5 again, because we've been building as a community a heck of a lot of industrial. One thing that those of you who've been on here for a while have heard me say, and I will say again, that when these developers come in and build speculative projects, it temporarily elevates the vacancy rate. Somebody builds a 400,000 square foot spec building, therefore you have 400,000 square feet empty. So the rate on the CoStar report was 7%, which is, you can see, was about 500K empty square feet out of almost 7 million, 6.9. But a logistics company that we've actually been in contact with off and on for years, actually since the lockdown era around 2020, purchased this large building that I have a photo of. I probably sat here about a year ago talking about how a large institutional developer called Midwest Industrial Funds was building this building on Jack Court. It's a $40 million building, so it's no joke. They built that on spec. And buildings like that are in pretty high demand. We call it last mile facilities. That's what they say now in industrial real estate. That's a logistics company. I won't go delve too deep into an individual company, but they're a logistics company that doesn't, it's not like McKesson, where every single product in that whole building is owned and distributed by McKesson. This is a building that'll have probably a dozen or more different businesses using it for logistics, but under one logistics company that handles it. A lot of these big companies, as you probably all know, use third-party logistics, and this is going to be one of those. There's going to be a lot of auto parts in there, for instance. So, like I said, the number, I don't want to sound defensive, but the number is not 7% vacancy rate. Once RIM Logistics moves all their stuff in later this year, it'll be back down to about 1%. One thing I did want to mention too, I sit here and I say this new building, this new building, this new building in the business park. Our industrial inventory in 2017, like even since I started doing this report every year, back then was about 3.9 million square feet, and here we are at about 6.9. So we don't have a lot more to go. I said close to industrial build out. There's some smaller sites available in the business parks. I say maybe next year, I don't know. I don't know if next February. I think what I'll probably be saying is something like there's maybe one more industrial site, or maybe two. They can be changed. You know, if there's an 8-acre site left in Brewster Creek Business Park, it might be a one site for 8 acres, or it might become 2 sites of 4 acres. I can tell you this, that my phone used to ring off the hook for many years for industrial, and it doesn't anymore. I think people realize, the brokers realize there's not a lot of inventory. And when I do get the calls, like one I had 2 of them last week, and both of them are looking for smaller sites to put up like a 25,000 square foot building, or maybe 50. So the days of these 400,000 square foot behemoths, I mean, I don't think we're gonna, we might get one more we're working on, but it's in a site, sites outside of these traditional business parks, okay? So there's still more industrial to go, but like I said, as I said when I was growing up a Cubs fan, and I said about 30 straight years, maybe next year, we'll reach build out for industrial. Commercial success, tried to find some pictures with some commissioners in there, and just like our industrial rate, the commercial vacancy rate is just about 7%. Last year it was 6%. Same thing I said about industrial. The report came out a little bit before a couple leases were recorded, and I want to tell you that when it comes to looking at an entire town, like one 1,200 square foot lease doesn't make like a big difference. But when you have 3 or 4 or 5 of them, it starts to make a difference. It's in the paper, it's in the long report that I sent you, but not in this one. We have, give or take, about 1 million square feet of commercial/retail. That's when you take in everything, all the banks, the new Aldi, the Jewel, the Home Depot, you add it all together into one big thing, and we got about 7% vacancy. Honestly, it's probably like 6 or 5% now, because we've had about 3 or 4 new restaurants open just in like the last month or two. We're looking at this kind of as a macro level, but we have had a lot of small businesses and restaurants opening. And last year, I talked about, in particular, the town center had a high vacancy rate. We really wanted to fill that restaurant space that's sat vacant for years, where the Trackside Diner had been for a little period of time. And anyway, you can see here's the ribbon cutting photo from Issa's. So that was when sometimes I talk about, well, we have a prospect for this or we have a prospect for that. I'm not always at liberty to share exactly who it is while they work through their due diligence or negotiating a lease or whatever. But anyway, I sat here last year saying we were about to fill that space, and it was the family, the wonderful family that opened Issa's was that tenant I was talking about. More commercial success. I talked about these little restaurants opening. Interestingly enough, we had 2 of the comfort food, like hot dog type places close in very short order, Hoot Dogs and Dog Father, which really surprised a lot of people and had become a Bartlett institution over the years. And you probably all know this already, that Hoot Dogs was filled real quickly with a real popular place. One of Commissioner Densford's neighbors there, Mo Giros. And I'm sure you also all already know that Matt Waxler, the longtime owner-operator north of the border, he might even be reopening this week. I know it was any day now, and he's going to have a grand opening at the end of the month. Little Caesars, Drip Therapy, Cozy Cheesecake, small businesses. We got a picture there of some gigantic businesses that have opened just in the last month. Those were kind of in the works. We were talking about them coming soon last year. So when I talk about commercial success, I mean, I'm not going into every business, but you can see the list of restaurants. This Drip Therapy is an IV therapy place that just opened. There's a lot of different businesses we're working with. If you had people ask, what are we working on now? Working to get a dispensary in town is one of the things on my project list. They're opening up in basically surrounding Bartlett. Also another little, so I say we anticipate a lower vacancy rate when reporting next year. Of course, a lot of businesses, when they do close, they don't necessarily tell us they're going to, or they might not know it that they're going to, but 10%. I give a nod to Commissioner Erickson, who's been a banker for many years, and when you're calculating a commercial loan for a shopping center, I've taken economic development finance probably 5 times. They always bake in a 10% vacancy rate. And if you go to a lot of these conferences, they consider 10% kind of your average. Most towns are going to have about 10% vacancy rate. So we're doing better than that. When you start getting in the 12s, like I said, 8 years ago when we were at 20 for the whole town, it was pretty alarming. But it was some of those big, empty Dominics and stuff like that. And more commercial success. We've all been shopping there. Most of us, I think, made our way over there for the grand opening on February 1st. We talked about it a long time at the EDC, working towards bringing another grocery store to town. So, and I want to mention, I'm not talking a lot about incentives tonight, but a lot of these were attracted through the village board, the mayor and the board, bringing them in with the use of incentives, and we did offer an incentive to Aldi to help get them over there in streets of Bartlett. So, like I said, our industrial rate is falling, and as these new restaurants open and a few other vacant spaces are filled throughout the year, hopefully some of them will be before you for BETA grants. So if I had to wager, I think both of those rates probably would be a little lower next year. So office, I don't talk about office a lot, besides saying that in the case of Bartlett, it's a blessing and a curse. I always say that. And the curse is that we don't have some office tower with some headquarters of a Fortune 500 company with 4,000 employees that shop here and eat here and get gas here and get their hair cut here and bank here and do everything here. But I do want to say this, and not in my packet, but I went to like a state of the economy type of conference last Thursday morning in Oak Brook that I had been invited to and I went to. It was hosted by Inland Real Estate and CoStar, and they had the director of research for CoStar speaking there. And I'm just going to throw out there, the towns that are office heavy, they're having vacancy rates as bad or worse than I was talking about. They even mentioned Schaumburg with like over 30% for office. So these towns that built up the offices with people working at home, whatever the case may be, offices are definitely overbuilt in the Chicago market, and they talked about that quite a bit. So that's the blessing and a curse. We don't have a huge office population in town of office workers, but by the same token, we don't have an empty Sears campus or an empty Motorola campus or some, insurance building in Schaumburg that's probably 50% vacant. Our vacancy rate's been roughly the same since I started tracking this about 9 years ago. CoStar only identifies 249,000 square feet and 28 properties designated as office in Bartlett. Got one of them here, Suburban Orthopedics. And one thing that has affected our town that's reflective of the greater office industry is that last year, the office rental rate was the highest I'd ever seen or reported, was $26 a square foot, and it's fallen back down to $23.49 per square foot. And like I said, the CoStar report goes back years and years and years showing it. It's usually been in the low 20s like that. For some reason, the office space it was at a premium for a while, and the rents were rising, but now it's back down. It's still expensive, $23 a square foot, but anyway. So what's our rate? I have to look again. It's 3.7. So it hasn't really changed much. Daytime population is a metric that a lot of businesses look at. Back in the day, a lot of the food users were looking at that, particularly some of the fast food. They're gone now, but Sonic, that was one of the things Sonic asked me about the first time we met, and a few other businesses in that area. And it took us a long time to get over 10,000 daytime. They say daytime population. They mean people working in town. There's more people who live in town but might not be working. But that's one of those metrics that people look at, people who want to cater towards a certain type of crowd, or maybe really a lot of the fast food or quick casual food users like to take a look at that. Census on the map, I keep looking at it every year, even though it's always 3 years behind. Drives me nuts. But so we're always looking back into the past. When you see that somebody like me who lives outside of town, 7,117 people living outside of Bartlett, coming into Bartlett during the day to work. And I say this every year too. Yes, I shop at Aldi now, like Bartlett Aldi, like nonstop. I buy my gas here, I shop, go to restaurants. So 7,000 people come in and do business from outside. I know the number's higher than that, 1,003 who live and work in Bartlett. Like I said, that's from the census, not from me. And then we've always been a community where more people left during the day. We all know that. It had been always traditionally considered a bedroom community. And so over 20,000 people live in Bartlett but work elsewhere. Again, if you want to delve deep into the numbers, the report that I emailed to you shows the towns they go to, Chicago, Schaumburg, being the top two. So yeah, I said that lags a few years. It has one thing that is interesting that from the CMAP report that's gone up a lot is estimating 12% of workers, of Bartlett people working from home. That's changed a lot. I mean, when I started looking at that, it was like 4% or 3%. One of the questions I get asked every year at this, and I figure somebody would ask, is when I get to the sales numbers, how do the sales numbers keep going up? There's a number of factors, but I think one of the things we talked about doing when we did this in 2020 and 2021 is people who might otherwise have gone to a Schaumburg or an Elk Grove or a Chicago during the day, done some of their shopping or dining or whatever over there, now doing it here in town. So I think that's an important number, that 12% working from home. Hundreds of new jobs added to the business park. Like I said, I plan on still doing this report years from now, so I want to see that number grow, that inflow, outflow. That should change dramatically. There's hundreds and hundreds of jobs that haven't been captured yet. You can see from the top, well, it was from 2021. One of the metrics, although it's not always 100% indicative of the village's like economic development as a whole, but it's good to keep an eye on the unemployment rate, and it's basically identical as it was last year, low threes. They break it down by county too. The Cook County rate's always a little higher than the DuPage County rate for whatever reason, but that's been, knock wood, since that really spiked in 2020, spiked everywhere. It was like over 10% here. So that spike was short-lived, and we're back down around 3%. So I talked about rising sales. It seems like every year, for the 8 or 9 years I've been doing this, every year I report higher sales, but it's true. We have higher retail sales. Again, we're looking at, we're not saying this is the end of 2023, what they are. The state statistics are usually about 6 months behind. So we're always looking at from July a year and a half ago to the previous June, which is about 8 months ago. But last year it was, I mean, it wasn't long ago that we were talking about going over 200 million here. In my mind, that was like 12, 13 years ago. Then we got over 300 million. Now we're 3.96. So I figure next year we'll probably say 4 point something. It's not just more and more shopping. Part of it is change or more and more retail, but some of the online, they call it the Amazon tax. During the board meetings, Todd Dowden reports and the rising sales taxes being collected, a lot of it's due to online shopping as well. So it's not all shopping from Bartlett retail and restaurant. But the SIC codes, they haven't changed what the highest SIC codes are. Automotive, filling stations, drug and miscellaneous retail, meaning the 2 Walgreens and the 2 CVS's and 1 Walgreens. Lumber and building, which they mean Home Depot. Food, which they mean Jewel, and drinking and eating places. So they're fairly typical, but one thing we've never really seen there are automotive sales. And, I don't just say it's going to keep rising just out of pure optimism, although I like to be optimistic about it. We've got some big sales tax producers that haven't been counted in that. More Brewing was not counted in that. Aldi was not counted in that. Elgin Hyundai, and Elgin Genesis, of course, both are in Bartlett, were not counted in that. They all have sales tax rebates, but the sales tax portion that the village collects is going to be significant, particularly with the auto dealerships. Nobody can predict exactly what will happen, but while I can tell you that it took a good solid year of back and forth and negotiating with them before they committed to the town. And part of their sales tax rebate was providing some projections to the village. And I will just tell you, they project quickly to be the largest sales tax producer in the village, combined, and by a lot, like doubling the Jewel, like Jewel and Home Depot combined plus some. So that's going to be the largest sales tax producers, assuming people continue buying cars. Getting near the end of this, population and safety. Populations remain steady, but here you have a picture of a model home at the Grasslands. There's a little subdivision at Army Trail in Petersdorf that hasn't been counted yet. We're hoping that Opportunity Site E gets built, the residences at Bartlett Station. So altogether, we envision a few thousand new residents altogether with all the new residential that's kind of in the pipeline. So you might see that number increasing in the coming years. Neighborhood Scout always ranks Bartlett as one of the safer towns, safer than 93% of American communities of similar size. Risk of being, victimized by a violent crime is very low. I think the police officer just left, but there he is. 1 in 5,736. And while we were going through the branding research and meetings and interviews and everything like that, that was a common refrain. So I know Commissioner Perry always mentions that while we go through these. Bartlett's still well known as a safe community, and a lot of the businesses that move out of areas that are considered less safe, quite a few of them have brought that up as one of the things that help draw them into our town. So we're not done. This is all good news. I talk about all these new businesses, the low vacancy rates, the rising sales in our town, all the new businesses that we're attracting. But here you have our Lake Street corridor. Some of you guys probably recognize the vacant hot dog stand and the buildings near it. That's part of a new TIF district, excuse me, that we're working on right now. The mayor and the board and the EDC and staff, we recognize that Lake Street, has room to be improved in that area. It's not an easy project. I could probably talk for the next hour about all the moving parts over there. There's state-owned land. There's land that, the taxes haven't been paid on. There's all kinds of issues over there. But as I always say when we do a TIF, that's the reason it qualifies as a TIF area. It's not because it's perfect, but we have a plan in the works. You're going to be hearing a lot about that. And I have a feeling we're going to be talking about redeveloping the Lake Street corridor for a number of years over here. Yeah. Well, yes, it goes east and west of Oak Street. Just a couple properties deep. That's where some of the IDOT right-of-way is there. How deep? A few hundred feet. That's some of the area. Well, I'm not going to get too far into the redevelopment plan right now, but it spans both sides of the street. It includes the vacant gas station property across the street. I mean, we have some of the top TIF I think, one of the best TIF consultants that exists working on a plan with us. So it goes both east and west. That's a long story. That's not why it's closed. It's one of the challenges, let's just say, not talk about Superfund, but there's environmental issues to be addressed. And that, if you had to say, I suppose you could say that's one of the issues.
There's also an antitrust lawsuit on that property as well. There's also, it's really a mess. There's a lot of factors.
Tax buyers.
And then one of them too is, there's a merger going on between gas stations that is in court right now that is also holding up that property. And that's precisely why we're going through this
Yeah.
TIF process. It needs it, so we're excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, it can get pretty deep into TIF stuff, but I mean, they go property by property. They evaluate every single one. They look at the EAV going up and down. They look to see if there's dilapidation, deterioration, vacancy, tax buyers, like I said. It's not like the cleanest titled property that there is. There's a foreclosure on it as well. I mean, I can't say that there's going to be a TIF and then the next year you're going to see a beautiful new gas station over there. But TIF is the most powerful economic development tool in our toolbox. And when the time comes that somebody's ready, when all the pieces are in place to redevelop that property, it's a prime property, it's a great location, then, we may or may not use TIF funds for that, probably will.
And the property you're looking at in that picture is, forgive me, Tony might have mentioned this, but it's unincorporated, and we're in talks with the owner to have it be in town, which will make it a lot more attractive and give us some more control as well.
And the last little bullet point I put there about that is maintaining momentum. I'm talking about this restaurant, more brewing, Aldi, this and that, and we want to bring that momentum to other parts of town like this Lake Street area. Branding, we've been talking branding here for a long time, off and on. We did an RFP. That's already over a year ago. You recall bringing two of the finalists here, to give presentations, and ultimately the village entered into a contract with A5. We meet with them a lot. They've been doing a lot of work. You recall they came and met with the EDC and sat in the overflow room a few months ago. They came before the board. They met with various community groups. They did a survey. Scott and I and some others met with them today. They're coming up before the village board pretty soon to unveil their concepts. And we're also in the process of budgeting. The way we work with them is usually they do a pretty full-blown branding campaign that costs upwards of 6 figures. We had budgeted $25,000, if you recall. So we're going through the initial phases of the project with them this fiscal year. That already ends. It's coming up in about 2 months. And then, so we're looking at our next phases to actually start getting the branding stuff out there and some ads and some social media and stuff like that. I just wanted to mention that because it's another thing you're going to be seeing a lot. We're going to be talking about putting our branding out there, using it on our social media. I don't know how many print ads we might do. We might do some radio, we might do some TV. We haven't gotten that far yet, but we're going to start doing another branding campaign. We haven't done that for a very long time. So that's about where we're at with them, and we'll keep you all updated on that as well. Hopefully by the next month or 2 months from now, we'll have a branding concept to show you. And I guess that's it for now. About 40 minutes of talking about the Bartlett economy, and Scott or I or Sam will try to answer any questions you might have.
I have a question with regard to, you had on your slide 498,000 square feet, 400 of which was that one building. With the 98,000 square feet that's left, is there another larger building, or is it just a bunch of small shops?
No, that's a great question. That's another, sorry, I'm like chuckling about, that's another building that's like not even finished, that's listed on CoStar as available later this year.
In the industrial park?
Yeah.
Got it.
Well, not in Brewster Creek, in Blue Heron,
Okay,
98,000. Honestly, the two things that they list as available for 98 are two different buildings.
okay.
One's 400.
Exactly
and
the
one's
question.
98. That's a good question. Yeah, it's not a bunch of little small spaces.
Okay.
Can't find a little small space.
Just out of curiosity, we know what it sold for, the 400,000 square feet?
We do. Okay, yeah, 44 million. Yeah, 44.
44 million.
Yeah, and it cost almost that much. I mean, these institutional developers of industrial real estate usually do pretty well. Now, it's a risky venture, okay? I became a little bit close with these guys while they were building it. Two partners. It's called Midwest Industrial Funds. They have buildings like this going all over the place. It's not all their personal money. People invest with them. It was a $40 million building to build that they sold for 44 within 1 year. It's good to be a big industrial real estate developer.
Question on when the packet was sent out, it talked about the different tax streams where it's coming in, and there was a small mention of agricultural tax. Where's that?
I've been asked that before, and I always say I'm not too sure. Yeah, you're right. It's very small. I don't know if that means farm stands and stuff like that. These are kind of broad swaths, if you will.
Okay.
It's not one like particular business or anything like that. It's just the way they characterize, I think, some of the smaller independent sellers.
Okay.
That's my best guess.
Okay.
Is that it involves probably Tom's Farm Stand and a bunch of little businesses that probably sell, pies that people make out of their home or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Could you? Yeah. I agree. I'm going to say thank you, on behalf of staff and the mayor and board. It really does help a lot. It reduces debt, when people are starting off their businesses. We talk about it being competitive. There are some businesses that might go here or they might go there. I've been researching a lot of different towns' programs still, because we've modified the BETA program twice last year, if you recall. And so I've been taking a pretty hard look at other towns. And two comments on that. One is that almost every town has some type of small business grant program, so I almost feel like you have to have something. And the other thing I'll say about it is we tried to make it, it's more flexible maybe than some of the other towns, and try not to make it too onerous to go through it. But it's been changed a lot, you know, and we hope to have some good, we don't have any in the pipeline right this minute, but we have a few in mind, and we hope to bring you some good ones throughout the year. So thank you.
Since
Just
we're
out
on
of
that
curiosity, Tony, this here builder, if he was to build this in Schaumburg, would it cost him considerably more to build in Schaumburg than it would in Bartlett?
No, it would be, I mean, just using that town for an example, it really wouldn't be different. That's based on basically on the materials and the labor for a building of that size. Whether it's in Schaumburg or Elk Grove or Wooddale, a lot of the things that change town to town really are the property taxes. This one, however, was built in the Cook County portion of the village, but the village board and then the county approved a Class 6B on it. So picking on Schaumburg for a second in particular, without a Class 6B, I don't think anybody would build something quite like that in that town at this time. That's no insignificant thing to do that tax break. It lowers their property tax bill by roughly $1 million per year. So if you didn't get that here or Schaumburg or Elk Grove or anywhere in the Cook County, you don't see a lot of buildings like that going up in Cook County anymore. Right. There is. A lot of times we've done even customized reports. One thing I didn't put in here is we have some GIS reports that we subscribe to. You remember even in the early days of doing the beta grants, we would put in demographics reports for like a particular area. So, but to answer your question, with some types of businesses, yes, they do ask for this. With others, honestly, with the vacancy rate that we have, a lot of the businesses that we engage with and the brokers, they want to find a space, but what they do is they kind of give us their parameters. Rather than looking necessarily as the village as a whole, I'm going to use the dispensary as an example, if you don't mind. So, you know, we've been engaging with them for a while. I'm not saying it's coming to town. I'm just saying it's another thing we're trying to bring one into town. They have their own, they know that given the population and the demographics, there's going to be some level of demand. They look at the same thing that like a quick casual like Panera or Chipotle might look at, is like drive times and where's the closest one and all that kind of stuff. So they, you know, a challenge for them, when I talk about this vacancy rate, the point when I started working with them, there was only one space in town that was large enough to accommodate where they wanted to go and where it would be zoned accordingly. And guess what? That space filled. So then there was no space. Now there's another space because another business is relocating. So it's kind of a long answer, but a lot of the businesses, like when Mike called me during the, lockdown type period of time, he was looking at a place that was a former vacant hair business, but then also heard and learned about and saw the redevelopment of Streets of Bartlett. And, had a choice of more than one location, but chose what I think, and more importantly, he thinks is the best place for him to be located. So if a business asks us for it, we'll provide it. If somebody even asks any of you an idle question like that, share this or any of it, have them call me. A lot of, like Paula was here for a bit, like she uses this information a lot. It's not just something for me to say once a year, here's how our economy's going. So if there's somebody who wants I didn't really talk about traffic counts. Traffic sometimes is kind of a sore spot, but a lot of the businesses over the years were just looking at traffic counts. Average daily traffic. I could do a report on that if you want.
They're all very different. I think I've told this story before, but Tony and I, when we met probably a dozen times or so with Culver's, here's daytime traffic, here's 5-minute drive times, here's the county line, yeah, that's all great. They really wanted to know how many churches they were, how big the churches are, when they meet, how they're zoned. So, we had never really dealt with, at least I hadn't, in the time I've been working with Tony, dealt with a big player looking at our churches.
And schools.
And schools, yeah. So they're all the reports are very different, and like Tony said, many of them have their own algorithms and their own reports, and what we do kind of complements those. But every one that we've offered is kind of customized with our GIS department.
Great question.
Switching our attention a little bit to Route 59 and West Bartlett Road. I've been asked quite a few times from different neighbors, do I know what businesses are going to be going in there on the corner?
We don't know yet. I can tell you that most of the inquiries had been from fuel stations,
From what?
gas stations.
Gas station.
That's been who's expressed the most interest. We've been reaching out to many other business types. They have one of the best commercial brokerage teams in the Chicago area on it. I wouldn't start telling people that's what's going to go there. We don't have anybody in the pipeline at this point, just
A
interested
little
parties.
early right now?
I'm sorry?
Maybe it's a little early in the development. Businesses haven't been
Well,
inquiring.
you could say that, but it's becoming a high-profile site. People have taken notice that it's getting built. Like I said, they have somebody from Cornerstone Commercial who has been blasting it out to every developer and business and retail representative. It's early in terms of saying who's coming, because there's nobody coming there yet. But I will tell you, I've had about 6 or 7 different fuel stations contact me about it. And we're trying to get something, if that does happen over there, we're trying to bring some complementary uses to it as well. We'd like to see some restaurants. I said quick casual probably twice already tonight. We would like to see some other complementary uses there, other things that could serve the new neighborhood that's getting built over there, and the village as a whole. It's a busy, very busy site, very busy crossroads, has a lot of potential.
I would say it's a prime
Yeah.
area for commercial.
Yeah. And one thing I say, also always mention, because it gets marketed as a 6-acre site, when you get pretty deep into conversation with the people from Crown and their broker, it's more like 3.5, 3-ish of area that could be developed. It's not a huge site. It's going to be, some detention and stuff like that, some road and curb cuts and all that. So They're not looking at 6 acres of retail over there, which would be nice, but, yeah, there's nothing going in there quite yet. I've never heard of any solid plans for that. What I have heard is challenges with actually using the physical structure of it, and also regulations or whatever type of regulations the state has, that being a intersection of a state road and a county road. I do acknowledge you've been saying, brought that up many times. It's a good idea. We can bring it up once again, but I've never heard of any plans for it.
And I have been on the phone with the Illinois Department of Transportation probably 60 times to get them to cut back vegetation. I know that village staff made a run at them to implement your idea many, many, many years ago. Once the dust settles on that corner, your idea it's a great one. We're happy to make another run at it, for sure. Yeah, I think once the dust settles on that section, I think that's a fair question, and I think would be good for us to do.
Thanks, Bruce.
I want to circle back to beta grants for this past year. And it's something that we've kind of brought up before, but with your fiscal year coming to an end pretty soon, can you give us a sense of, we used X percent of the 2024 budget on beta grants, or, we budgeted 250,000 and we spent 200 of it, or do you have a number of what was spent on beta grants?
I would have to research that, but I will tell you, it's in the low 100 range. It's like a little more than half, I think, this year.
So about half the budget
Yeah,
was spent.
we have, so you mentioned fiscal year goes through the end of April.
Right.
We still have one large one pending, the boss's signature.
Okay.
It's makes me feel like I'm a banker. It's going over financials, and we have to make sure every single thing that was paid for is documented. I won't go deep into it, but assuming we can get that $50,000 grant done by the end of this fiscal year, it'd be just maybe around 200-something thousand, which would probably be about the most we've done. And we're budgeting 250 again.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any new business to discuss, Tony?
I think I don't have any more. I think I've been over enough
much covered
business tonight.
everything. If there's no new business for discussion, we'll just move to the adjournment.
A motion, we adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Tom.
1 hour exactly, perfect. Thank you.